Hi, this lecture or mini course of 3.5 hours is about transgenerational legacies from a historical, psychological, and spiritual perspective. And I'm Don Caviano, psychiatrist and psychotherapist with 50 years work experience. I lived in different countries with different cultures and different political systems. In then Soviet Union, Romania during Ceausescu, in then Western Germany, where I specialized in psychiatry, and then in the Netherlands. In the Netherlands, I worked for governmental mental health institutions and in private practice. The public mental health institute I was working for delegated me often to do consultations for asylum seekers centers. This work opened windows to many countries ravaged by war. I learned a lot more about geopolitics and the history of the countries from where these people came from. Altogether, I spent around 7 years in India, the first year as a backpacker, later due to my husband, who is Indian. And I have a special bond with Brazil, where I have been many times participating at ayahuasca ceremonies. The last 10 years, I live in the middle of a natural park in Portugal and work online, offering psychotherapy, harm reduction education for psychedelics, and integration of psychedelic experiences. And this is the outline of the course. It's 7 parts, and each part is more or less half an hour. First part, relationship with previous generation in non-Western cultures, ancestral worship. And I'll show you some videos. How did we, our Western culture, lose the communication line with our ancestors? How did we come to the concept of transgenerational legacies? I'll give you a brief history of the Western concept transgenerational legacies, and then I present to you the 3 tiers of transgenerational transmission: large group, families, and individual. And about large group legacies, I start with historical trauma and historical unresolved grief. Part 2, I give you an example of historical trauma which I witnessed myself, and again I show you some videos. Part 3, I continue with a large group legacies from a historical perspective, and I tell you something about chosen glory and chosen trauma and identity tent. These are concepts developed by Vamik Volkan, and I give you also I tell you about a personal experience with identity tent. And then I tell you something about time collapse, also a concept from Vamik Volkan, and I tell you about poverty, which is also a transgenerational legacy. Part 4 addresses families, and I tell you something about the 3 main fathers of family therapy: John Bowlby, Murray Bowen, and Ivan Boshormeni Nodge. And then I present you 2 thinkers out of the box, which are family therapists with a bridge to spiritual interventions. And these are Bert Hellinger and Alejandro Jodorowsky. And the last part is about the individual and then the spiritual perspective. And this is a shamanic medicine wheel. And this I learned from Dan van Kampenhout. And last but not least is the conclusion. Transgenerational. Obviously, it means from one generation to the next. And previous generations means ancestors. And we, in our Western culture, do not have the tradition of worshipping our ancestors. We lost it. They live in our memory, but in our worldview, they are not alive in another non-material plane of existence. For us, who is dead is dead. We do not believe that they could play an active role in our lives. Hence, we do not maintain with them a line of communication. We do not communicate with them. Yet we are the only culture who does not worship our ancestors. All non-Western cultures believe that the ancestors are alive and, if invoked, participate in our lives. And the ancestors are asked for healing, guidance, protection, predictions, and forgiveness. I'll show you now a couple of videos about non-Western cultures worshipping their ancestors. So please see it. It adds flavor to my presentation.
Nalkaradarawang ngadi gabawaranggal ngalinyang kina bupalagtira darwang kamari muray na ngumangal kunganay ngura muliarang diwirang muray ang lukara winya namara nangangatang mura murung alinda murang alulu murung alinda.
Next video is about ayahuasca retreat center in the Amazon. And ayahuasca is also called the wine of the dead. And the indigenous peoples who know this brew for ages, they drink it very often to contact ancestors.
Atisa explains to me that these people are being trained in traditional spiritual practices.
This is spiritual elevation. They are under training. There are two things that are very important. Ululation, it's a show of reverence. And then secondly, they were mentioning the name of the ancestor. That's very important. So through ululating and also clapping hands. When you clap hands, you are showing reverence.
And it summons the spirit.
That's right. That's right. That's the whole purpose. What we are witnessing here is spirituality. It wasn't religion. It's not proper to call it religion. It's spirituality for us. But that spirituality is what ensured fertility of the soil and sustenance of the human race.
So just list for us then what those fundamental beliefs were, that power resided in nature, that there were gods present in trees, in plants, in the soil.
It all starts with the nature of person. When you look at me, what is my nature? Western society will see me as flesh, blood, and bones. For us, yes, all those are there. But more importantly, there is spirit. We believe, Africa believes in the soul, in the spirit. And the two are married. When I die, death is not the end. It's but the beginning of longer life, eternity. That's what Africa believes. This is why you're going to find death ceremonies, rituals are quite complex. They are meant to guide the spirit, going wherever it is going, perhaps to some constellation. Stars were very important. It's a pity that Africa is losing a knowledge of astronomy. Our forefathers were studying the stars because you learned a lot. Even during the night, stars will tell you how advanced the night was. So spiritualism has that basis. And then we had that ceremony, which we call bringing home ceremony, where you are inviting the departed spirit to come back, say, after a year, to look after its progeny. So when I die, as a spirit, I'll come back to look after my own children. This was fundamental to African spirituality.
And your grandchildren and so on and so forth.
That's right.
On the profound topic of Pitru Paksh, Guru Pashupati will be answering questions like who are our Pitrus? Where do they live? How can we help our troubled ancestors? And how can we transform our lives during this sacred period?
Namaste everyone. Today I'm honored to welcome back my Guruji, Guru Pashupati, the Parampara Adhikari of the ancient Himalayan school of yoga called Trilok Akhada. Today we embark on a deep exploration of the profound topic of Pitru Paksh. We will delve into the spiritual journey of Pitru Paksh with Guruji.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Happy to be here.
Guruji, to begin our exploration of the profound topic of Pitru Paksh, should we first understand what Pitru means and what is its connection with the realm of Pitrulok?
Yes. So the Pitrus are our ancestors, but we consider the ancestors both from the father's side and also the mother's side, usually. But nowadays, a lot of people think that Pitrus are only from your father's side. It's not like that. A lot of human beings have cared to bring you into this world. A lot of human beings have made sacrifices so that we are here. And it is uncountable if you really look at it. So all of these are called the Pitrus. Now, have all of them, after they passed away, where are they? In what kind of state are they? There are 14 worlds according to the Vedas, and 7 of them are called lokas, including our world. It is called Bhuloka, the world of the bhutas, 5 elements. This is Bhuloka. Similarly, there is Bhuvar Loka, there is Suvar Loka. Bhuvar Loka is made out of light, Suvar Loka is made out of sound. And there are many such lokas all the way up to Satyalok. So, from my guru is the school of Aghora. And that they teach you how to be an eagle of death in your astral world. So we go into deep meditation and we reach into a place which is the river between the living and the dead. And on the other side of the river, if you are able to fly across, you are able to then contact anybody who has passed away, their consciousness, and you're able to speak to them. And even people who have recently passed away, sometimes they're holding on onto the world of the living. They don't know how to shift. So it's a very multi-sensory world. There are different smells there, different tastes, different sights that we can see. Even though we are in this body, we're able to project our consciousness to that place. And it's the responsibility of the eagles of death, you know. We take the form of an eagle in that world. It's our responsibility to make sure that there's nobody left there doing something they don't want to do, or if they don't have clarity in something, to take them across. So by this interaction, I can tell you, from that authority, I can tell you that it's not really only one line which passes through. There are a lot of ancestors, and when if they're fond of you, and if they've been watching you, then this is the time when you can really get in touch with them and contact them.
I hope you enjoyed the videos, and these pictures show how ancestors are worshipped in China and in Japan. So the question is, when and how did we in our Western culture lose the connection to our ancestors? As Christianity spread across Europe between the 4th and 10th centuries, it gradually replaced many indigenous practices, including ancestor worship. Christianity emphasized the worship of one God and veneration of saints, not of ancestors. Ancestor worship was seen as a form of idolatry, forbidden by the Church. Practices considered pagan, including ancestor worship, were suppressed or transformed into Christian rituals, like All Saints' Day and All Souls' Day. Protestantism rejected even the veneration of saints and anything resembling ancestor worship, focusing instead on personal faith and the Bible. The European Enlightenment in the 17th and 18th century meant a paradigm shift in the Western culture. Rationalism, reason, secularism, scientific inquiry, individual rights. It is called the Age of Reason, and ancestor worship was considered superstitious, primitive. And this is how our culture still sees it. How did we come, nevertheless, to the concept of transpersonal legacies? I reiterate, non-Western cultures' approach to their ancestors is to conceive them as present in person and to remember them individually and collectively, and to maintain with the ancestors a line of communication. These cultures honor, worship, supplicate the ancestors through ancient rituals, while asking for their guidance, blessings, protection, and predictions. So the level of intervention is spiritual. Our approach in the West is psychological. The understanding that one generation leaves to the next generation not only material goods, but also non-material, in particular psychological legacies dawned on us in the aftermath of World War II. Moreover, these non-material legacies shape our identity, and with this, our lives. And meanwhile, the observations, insights, explanation models related to this non-material heritage have grown into an extensive, complex body of knowledge, and I'll tell you what I know about it. I'll take you now through a brief history of the Western concept transgenerational legacies. It started during World War I, in which 18 million people died and 4 empires collapsed, and grew in the wake of World War II, in which not only 75 million died, but the world order changed altogether. Because of these circumstances, in which the insight of non-material legacies sprouted, the thinkers and researchers focused on the pain, the suffering transmitted from one generation to the next due to wars and their aftermath. In other words, they focused on the dark legacies. This is why in my lecture I will address mainly the transgenerational transmission of pain and suffering, of trauma. The shadows ancestors from long ago throw on our lives are most and foremost the shadows of war. And I have 2 quotes. One is from Winston Churchill. He said, "War is an engine of history." And Heraclitus in the 6th century BC said the same. "War is a father of all things." One way to look at our collective history is to see it as a chain of wars. We move from war to war. War is a blueprint for collective history which sweeps in its wake individual destinies. Impersonal, unpredictable forces hold sway, and identity becomes a fulcrum around which the unleashed forces gather and collide with each other. Thus, at the core of it all is identity. Collective identity, individual identity, identity. And identity is not a monolith, it is a complex composite. Everything I call I, me, myself, mine, and we call we, ourselves, us, ours, are aspects of the composite. And let's say that all elements of the composite form a tent under which we take shelter. Identity is a pole which keeps the tent together. And you can see here the reflection of the tent. Let's say that this is the unconscious, the collective unconscious, and we can see how deep the identity, collective identity goes. And if someone slings mud or throws a rock at the tent, and the pole and the tent are in jeopardy, instinctively we defend it with all our might. And collective identity is handed down from and enacted by one generation to the next generation. And this is the most and foremost non-material aspect our ancestors bequeathed to us, and the collective identity, which is tied to their history and which becomes our history. Without being part of a collective identity, we are lost. Being part of a collective identity, we are confined. This is the power of identity. So, two quotes which inform the presentation. One is, pain travels through generations until someone is willing to feel it. This comes from Steffi Wagner, the director, founder, and educator of the Mother Wound Project. And the second is a paraphrase after Murray Bowen. The roots of the most severe human problems, as well as the highest levels of human adaptation, are generations deep. There are 3 layers or tiers of transgenerational transmission. One is the large groups, and these are nations, ethnical groups, religious groups, large groups. The second are the families, and the third are the individuals. And I'll address first the large groups legacies. So when I talk about large groups, I'll address historical trauma and unresolved grief, chosen glory and chosen trauma, identity tent, and I'll give you also a personal example, time collapse, and last but not least, poverty. Historical trauma and unresolved grief. These are concepts worked out by Maria Yellow Horse Braveheart, and they have influenced psychology, sociology, and politics. And Maria Yellow Horse Braveheart, she earned her Master's of Science from Columbia University School of Social Work in 1976 and a doctorate in clinical social work from the Smith College in 1995. In the 80s, she started to work with Lakota, and this is when and where she gained insights into the chronic psychological suffering, into the chronic pain among the Lakota and other Native American groups. She herself was a member of the Hunkpapa Oglala Lakota tribe. Historical trauma. What does she understand under historical trauma? It is a systemic, multi-generational, cumulative psychological wounding of large groups of people due to violence and oppression lasting over long periods of time. And the historical unresolved grief refers to the persistent grief that accompanies the historical trauma. The collective wounding is expressed in depression, self-destructive behavior, including substance abuse, suicidality, anxiety, low self-esteem, anger, aggression, difficulty recognizing and expressing emotions, preoccupation with suffering and death, loyalty to ancestral suffering, feeling the ancestral pain, and the sense that personal happiness betrays ancestors who suffered. Related to his healing of historical trauma, Maria Yellow Horse Braveheart recognized and proposed 4 stages and designed for each one specific interventions to foster the healing. 1. Acknowledging and facing the collective trauma and its impacts. 2. Educating individuals and communities about the origins and consequences of historical trauma. 3. Facilitating the expression and processing of grief and pain, often through communal mourning and culturally relevant ceremonies. And 4. Moving beyond the pain to reclaim wellness, identity, and community strength. Michelle Sotero was affiliated to the University of Nevada, and she did mainly conceptual and theoretical work on historical trauma. According to Michelle Sotero, historical trauma is a collective intergenerational trauma which affects entire communities. In her research, she found that historical trauma involves the destruction or erosion of cultural practices, language, and traditions that were central to a group's identity, creating what she calls a cultural void that leads to a sense of alienation and disconnectedness for many generations. The transmission occurs through family narratives, the modeling of coping mechanisms, and disrupted parenting styles. Her healing model is very similar with Maria Yellow Horse Braveheart's model and involves acknowledging the trauma, fostering cultural renewal, and providing opportunities for communities to rebuild their identity and autonomy. And I'll show you now about historical trauma, how it looks in real life. First, I'll tell you about the culture before the trauma, and after that, I'll show you how historical trauma looks like. And this is a situation which I witnessed myself.